Chapter 221. Jerome shook his head and let out a soft sigh as he asked, "Faye, do you remember what I told you about that incident on the bus?" Faye blinked and nodded. "Of course I do. You've told me so many times, Grandpa." Wenzel and the other girls immediately perked up, interested in the topic. Sydney said, "We were just talking about that. Wenzel thinks it was some badass ex-military guy who saved everyone, but Bianca says it was just a student. We argued about it for a while but couldn't come to a conclusion." Wenzel stuck to his opinion. "It had to be an ex-soldier, no doubt. Right, Mr. Lowell Sr. I mean, those criminals were tough, right? I heard they had some combat training and weapons. No way some random student could take them down." He looked expectantly at Jerome, figuring that as someone who had been there, he would have the final say. Jerome stroked his beard and smiled. "Well, you're both right, and wrong. At the time, I didn't know who saved me either. And you're right, the criminals weren't amateurs. Ordinary people wouldn't have stood a chance against them. But you're wrong about one thing. It wasn't some battle-hardened soldier who saved me. It was a high school senior. After he saved everyone, he suddenly remembered he had to take his college entrance exam. The officers on duty even drove him to the test themselves." His words carried the weight of someone with first-hand experience. Wenzel still had doubts but felt awkward pressing further. Even Jerome himself had found it hard to believe at the time. The attacker had been vicious and strong enough to overpower multiple grown men. Yet, somehow, a high schooler had taken him down. And what was even crazier was that the kid had disarmed him barehanded. After a brief pause, Jerome continued, "Later, asked some friends in law enforcement to help me track down that brave young man. It turns out that I wasn't the only one looking for him. The local authorities and even city officials were trying to find him to give him the recognition he deserved. But there were too few clues, and since the kid never stepped forward, the whole thing eventually faded away." He stopped again, this time turning his gaze toward Earl. Earl shifted uncomfortably. He already had a feeling where this was going. Sure enough, Jerome smiled knowingly and said, "It's been over a year, and I thought I'd never find that young hero, but, today, I finally did." Everyone around them, including Faye's father, Silas Bautista, froze in shock. They had no idea who Jerome was talking about. Silas couldn't help but ask, "Dad, who are you talking about?" Jerome slowly pointed at Earl. "It's you, young man. Are you still going to deny it? I've been searching for you all this time, and here you are, right under my nose. What a twist of fate. You've done a damn good job keeping this under wraps, huh?" You never once stepped up to take credit. Every pair of eyes locked onto Earl. Their jaws practically hit the floor. Out of all the possibilities they had considered, none of them had expected this. Earl felt the weight of their stares. But there was no escaping it now. He met Jerome's sharp gaze and chuckled. "You've got a great memory, Mr. Lowell Sr." Chapter 222. Earl had assumed Jerome would have forgotten by now. After all, so much time had passed, and they had barely crossed paths ever since that day. But to his surprise, Jerome still remembered everything clearly and even spoke with absolute certainty. If he kept denying it now, it would just seem pointless. So, he simply admitted it. Jerome laughed heartily. "Earl, don't underestimate me. I might be old, but my memory is still sharp. And now that I've confirmed it, I gotta say, real heroes rise young. That situation was incredibly dangerous, yet you stepped up without hesitation. That takes guts." It was official. Earl had pulled off something unbelievable. And what was even crazier, he had kept his mouth shut about it this whole time. Everyone's perception of him changed in an instant. Especially the ladies, they stared at him with wide eyes, some of them practically glowing with admiration. Wenzel, on the other hand, was completely speechless. He couldn't believe Earl had gone through something this insane on his way to the college entrance exam. Not only that, but he had still managed to ace the test and score first in the entire province. Frustration boiled up in Wenzel, and he finally blurted out, "Earl, you're seriously something else. You did something this huge and didn't say a damn word, then casually walked into the exam and took home the top score. If it were me, I wouldn't even wait for people to find out. I'd be out there with a megaphone making sure everyone knew. Hell, I'd even demand a full ride scholarship just for the effort." Despite his tone, his words carried nothing but pure admiration. Bianca kept staring at Earl, trying to wrap her head around it. The more she thought about it, the more it made sense. She remembered that day by the river when Earl had jumped in to save her without a second thought. If anyone had the ability, the courage, and the selflessness to do something like this, it was him. She had zero doubts. Sydney and Lila exchanged glances, still trying to process it. Who would have thought that this tall, lanky guy had such a heroic side? Even Faye was stunned. She stammered, "Grandpa, are you sure it was Earl?" She had imagined that faceless hero countless times before. But not once had she ever thought it could be Earl. Jerome gave her a calm look. "Faye, are you doubting my memory now?" Then, he turned back to Earl. "Earl, you've got an incredible sense of morality. People like you are rare these days. The news stations were trying to track you down for weeks. Even state-level reporters came to the city looking for you." He wasn't wrong. If Earl had stepped forward back then, he would have become a national sensation overnight. But the fact that he had chosen to remain anonymous only made his actions all the more remarkable. In today's world, people like him were few and far between. Wenzel suddenly jumped in, unable to hold back. He said, "Mr. Lowell Sr., you probably don't know this, but this wasn't the first time Earl pulled something like this." He pointed at Bianca. Back then, she fell into the river, and no one else dared to go in. But Earl didn't hesitate. He jumped right in and saved her. Chapter 223. Wenzel exaggerated as he described how heavy the rain had been that day and how fast the river's current had been. Jerome's eyes widened in shock. He turned to Faye for confirmation, and when she nodded, he got to his feet. His voice was filled with sincerity as he looked at Earl and said, "Earl, you are incredible. I can't thank you enough. If it weren't for you that day, I might not be standing here now. You saved my life. You're not just a hero, you're my savior. Please, allow me to show my gratitude properly." Without hesitation, Jerome gave Earl a deep bow. It wasn't just a polite gesture. Only someone who had been there and truly understood the danger of that moment could appreciate just how extraordinary Earl's actions had been. Silas finally snapped out of his daze, his chest swelling with emotion. He stepped forward and called out, "Earl, our family owes you a great debt. I thank you from the bottom of my heart." He followed Jerome's lead and bowed deeply. Seeing them stand, Faye's family members immediately rose as well, bowing low to Earl to express their gratitude. Earl panicked, waving his hands. "Please, don't do this. It's been so long. There's no need to keep thinking about it. Faye, help your grandfather up." He quickly stepped aside, avoiding their bows entirely. But Faye didn't move. She felt a deep sense of gratitude herself. If anything, she believed Earl deserved this kind of respect. Instead of helping her grandfather, she stood up as well, intending to bow to Earl herself. Jerome spoke again, "Earl, our family will never forget what you've done. You didn't just save me, you're now an honored guest in our home. If you ever need anything at all, you can always come to us." Just as they were about to bow again, Earl turned his head away in frustration. His voice was firm as he said, "You're all my elders. If you keep doing this, I really don't know how I'm supposed to stay here. Besides, I think anyone would have stepped up in that kind of situation." His tone left no room for argument. Jerome saw that Earl truly wasn't comfortable with the attention. With a chuckle, he sat back down, nudging Silas to do the same. "All right, I suppose I got a little carried away," Jerome admitted. "But I'm really happy that we've found you. No matter what, you have to stay at our house for a while." Then, he turned to Faye. "Faye, I used to worry about you hanging around those kids with their bright red and green hair, all dressed like circus performers. But seeing that you've got a friend like Earl, I can finally relax." Faye instantly understood what he meant. Many of her musician friends followed trendy styles, their bold fashion choices standing out in the eyes of the older generation. She stuck out her tongue playfully, then stole a quick glance at Earl before immediately lowering her head. Jerome continued, Faye, remember, birds of a feather flock together. You should surround yourself with good people. And if you ever decide to get married, I'd fully support you choosing a young man with Earl's character. Faye's face instantly turned red. She stomped her foot and protested, Grandpa. What are you even talking about? Earl and I are just friends. Friends, Jerome said with a straight face. Well, a boyfriend is still a friend. It was obvious he liked Earl. He had received the kind of life-saving kindness that couldn't be repaid, so if he could match his granddaughter with the young man, why not? Faye spun around in frustration, refusing to talk to her grandfather anymore. But she couldn't help sneaking a glance at Earl from the corner of her eye, curious about how he would react to all this, especially since she had turned him down once before. Chapter 224. Unfortunately, Earl didn't show the reaction Faye had been expecting. There was no excitement on his face, only awkwardness. The overwhelming enthusiasm from the Bautista family made him a little uncomfortable. Thinking fast, he quickly said, It's getting late. I have an important exam this afternoon. It's a major part of my final grade. If I don't do well, I might fail the class, so I should probably head out early. Jerome and Silas immediately tried to persuade him to stay, but Earl insisted that his exam was a priority. Seeing how firm he was, they had no choice but to let him go. Since Faye also had classes in the afternoon, everyone left together. Jerome originally wanted Silas to drive them, but one car wouldn't fit everyone. In the end, they all took the bus back instead. At the bus stop, Jerome reluctantly saw them off, reminding Earl multiple times to visit whenever he had time. Only after Earl reassured him several times did he finally let them leave. On the bus, Wenzel sat beside Earl, practically buzzing with excitement. He eagerly asked Earl about his encounter with the criminals and the secret to his victory in the competition. Earl simply smiled and said nothing, offering no further details. In the last row of the bus, Faye sat with Lila and Sydney. Lila couldn't take her eyes off Earl. This guy had suddenly appeared in their lives, turned out to be the top scorer in the entire state, and had multiple heroic rescues under his belt. She couldn't help but feel drawn to him. Trying to sound casual, she leaned toward Faye and said, Faye, this bus ride is kinda boring. Why don't you tell us a little about Earl? I'm curious about his past. She made it seem like she was just making small talk. But the more she tried to play it cool, the more obvious it became that she had other motives. Sydney picked up on it immediately. She blinked her big eyes mischievously. Lila, don't tell me you're interested in him. Lila blushed. She hesitated for a moment before saying, I was just asking. I mean, Wenzel just mentioned that he was the top science student in the state. Wenzel really had no filter. He spilled everything. Faye nodded. Yep, he got into Alnewgo University as the top science student in the state. Sydney gasped. Wow, so he's really that amazing. A genius and a hero. Taking down a criminal on the exam day itself and still being able to become the top scholar in the state was the kind of story one only saw in movies. Lila's eyes lit up with interest. She hesitated for a second before asking, So, does he have any hobbies? Faye thought for a moment. He's really into basketball, and he's really good at it. But that wasn't all. His talent for music, songwriting, composing, and singing, was nothing short of extraordinary. No, extraordinary, didn't even begin to cover it. If someone who dominated the Billboard Hot 100 and drove fans crazy could only be called extraordinary, then what about all the professional artists he had surpassed? And what about people like them, who were just students trying to make it in music? Wouldn't these students just be so insignificant? Lila hesitated again before lowering her voice. So, you said he doesn't have a girlfriend. Is that really true? Chapter 225. Faye nodded. Sydney giggled. Oh, Lila, are you actually interested in him? Are you thinking about making the first move? This time, Lila didn't deny it. Her cheeks flushed slightly, but instead of arguing, she said, I just think he seems really great. If he really doesn't have a girlfriend, Faye, would you mind giving me his number? She hadn't spent much time around Earl, but something about him drew her in. His mannerisms were refined, his smile warm and effortless. And his eyes, there was something captivating about them. She had spent most of lunch sneaking glances at him, completely absorbed. Simply put, he was the kind of guy who made girls' hearts race. Lila had always had high standards for a boyfriend: money, looks, talent, a good family background, intelligence, the whole package. But the moment she met Earl's gaze, all that stuff didn't matter anymore because Earl was truly exceptional and interesting. She found herself wondering, if she could date someone like him, wouldn't life be so much more exciting? Faye grinned playfully. Sure, but honestly, I'm not totally sure if he has a girlfriend or not. I'll find out for you. If he's single, I'll put in a good word for you. Her tone was carefree, but deep down, a strange, uneasy feeling crept over her. Lila, Sydney, even Bianca, and Wenzel, they had only seen a small glimpse of Earl. If it weren't for pure coincidence, Faye herself wouldn't have known just how much more there was to him. His talent went beyond what most people could even comprehend. He wasn't just the top scholar in the state or some skilled fighter who happened to save lives. He was Soul, the music king who had once dominated the charts nationwide. Though the cyberbullying had driven him into hiding, his genius couldn't be erased. The records he had set still ruled the music industry. And Faye would never forget that moment at the IT summit. Standing before a room full of CEOs and business giants, Earl had spoken with unwavering confidence. Even though his company was just a startup, it had shined brighter under his leadership than anyone could have expected. No one here understood Earl's true identity better than she did. He wasn't just impressive, he was legendary. Even if she told the others, they probably wouldn't believe it. The truth was simply too unbelievable. As she sorted through her thoughts, the realization hit her. Earl was beyond ordinary. Her gaze naturally drifted toward him. The sunlight streamed in through the bus window, casting a glow on his face. His features were sharp, his posture straight. Even sitting on a crowded bus, he carried himself with effortless confidence. She suddenly remembered that moment at their high school graduation party. The memory had replayed in her mind countless times ever since she had learned more about him. Back then, in front of all their classmates, he had confessed his feelings for her. And she had turned him down. Back then, he had seemed so ordinary. Just another classmate. But now, she saw him differently. Now, she remembered the look in his eyes when she rejected him, disappointed, yet unshaken. She remembered how he had been misunderstood at Bianca's birthday party yet remained composed and unbothered. She remembered the way he commanded the stage with ease. And she remembered how, at that summit, he had stood before industry leaders with the quiet confidence of someone who knew he was capable. Chapter 226. Earl loved sports, played basketball exceptionally well, and always stepped up to help others. He wasn't just the guy who had jumped into the river to save Bianca. He was also the one who had fought off an armed criminal on the bus and disappeared without a word. Faye still remembered that rainy day when they had rushed onto the bus together, heading back to school. She leaned gently against him, and even though they weren't touching, it felt like there was hardly any space between them. That moment had given her a strange sense of comfort, something warm and reassuring. And without realizing it, she had come to like that feeling. Somehow, Earl had quietly transformed into the exact kind of man Faye had always imagined. He was her dream guy. He was like a character straight out of one of those cheesy rom-coms she secretly loved. He wasn't just checking boxes, he was the checklist. And now, even Lila, someone who never settled for anything less than perfect, was totally into him, like a full-blown crush. Meanwhile, Faye was over here low-key spiraling, caught between being happy for him and wondering why she wasn't the one he was looking at. It was messy, and her heart was racing trying to figure it all out. The bus ride back to campus continued as passengers got off at various stops. Irene Music Academy and the Institute of Technology were further ahead, so by the time they reached Alnewgo University, only Bianca and Earl remained. The two of them stepped off the bus together and walked into the campus side by side. Earl was completely unaware of the thoughts running through the ladies' minds. To him, it had just been a simple meal, nothing more. He was rational enough to never indulge in fantasies of some dramatic moment where he would suddenly become irresistible to every girl around him. They walked in silence, heading toward the dorms. Earl thought about breaking the quiet, but whenever he glanced at Bianca's calm, distant demeanor, the words never left his lips. To him, she was like a celestial being, graceful, untouchable. Every little gesture, every movement of hers fascinated him. Ever since becoming the male voice of the campus broadcast station, his feelings for her had only deepened. The time they spent together during broadcasts was the part of his day he looked forward to the most. But the problem was, Bianca's attitude toward him had always been the same. Distant, polite, unbothered. Whenever a broadcast ended, she would simply carry on like it was just another routine task, while for Earl, it felt like an emotional roller coaster. This difference made him doubt himself even more. And whenever he saw her with Leslie, his heart would sink. Before he knew it, they had arrived at the entrance of the females' dormitory. Bianca finally spoke. Her voice was soft as she said, "I'm heading up. You should go back too." Earl nodded, watching as she climbed the stairs. A faint feeling of disappointment crept up inside him. Just as he turned to leave, her voice suddenly rang out behind him, clear and melodic. "Earl, don't forget about the afternoon broadcast." He looked back. Bianca stood by the door, giving him a playful wink. Her usual calm smile was still there, but something about it lifted his mood. The gloom in his heart faded a little. He smiled back and said, "I won't forget." With their sophomore year in full swing, classes had become increasingly demanding. Beyond their core modules, students had to select electives to complete their credits. Earl picked subjects that interested him: history, psychology, and computer programming. Meanwhile, the novel he had been serializing online, The Legend of the East, had begun to gain serious traction. It was creating the perfect foundation for a major game being developed by Drakengard Games. But Earl wasn't content with just that. His ambitions stretched much further. He wanted this game to break into the international market. To make that happen, he needed more than just technical skills. He had to deepen his understanding of different cultures, psychology, and everything that could help him bridge the gap between different audiences. Chapter 227. That afternoon, Earl was in his dorm, casually playing on his computer, when his phone rang. It was Belle calling. She invited him to dinner, but he politely declined, saying he was busy. Not long after, the doors swung open. Belle walked in, carrying a bag in her hand. Earl froze for a moment. They hadn't seen each other in over 2 months. Though she had sent him plenty of selfies over the summer, nothing compared to seeing her in person. She looked even more stunning than before. Her ponytail bounced lightly as she moved, her bright eyes and delicate lips radiating effortless charm. There was something about her presence, something intoxicating. But what really caught Earl's attention was her outfit. She was dressed in a fitted athletic top and sleek yoga pants that accentuated every curve of her figure. In the sweltering heat, this choice of attire was particularly distracting. Earl's heartbeat quickened. There was an alluring scent around her, a sweetness that made it hard to look away. If she were his girlfriend, he doubted he'd be able to resist pulling her into his arms right then and there. But she wasn't. So, he forced himself to stay composed. Still, Belle clearly noticed his lingering gaze. A blush crossed her face, a mix of shyness and amusement flashing in her eyes. She placed the bag on the desk, then turned her head slightly, pretending to pout. "You'd better stop staring, Big Bun. If you keep looking at me like that, I might just have to tie you up." Earl quickly shifted his focus back to his computer, but her image lingered in his mind. Just then, a soft breeze carried her scent closer. Belle picked up the bag and held it out to him, smiling. "I've brought you dinner. You should eat first before we go for a run." "A run?" Earl looked confused. Belle's expression turned slightly exasperated. "Did you forget? You promised me last semester that you'd go running with me. How else am I supposed to stay healthy? And because of you, I even put on this workout outfit." She leaned in closer, her slender frame pressing lightly against his back. Her soft hair brushed against his cheek, and her voice turned quiet, almost a whisper. "Big Bun, If don't stay healthy, wouldn't that make you feel bad? The scent of her hair, the gentle teasing in her voice, and the unspoken emotion in her eyes stirred something dangerous inside Earl. He clenched his jaw, pushing the feeling down. With a sigh, he said, Belle, helped you last semester. You promised you wouldn't keep bothering me. Belle had a way of pulling at his emotions, but he had convinced himself that she only sought him out when she was bored. He had learned to keep his guard up to protect himself from her unpredictable games. But the moment he spoke, she pouted dramatically, her eyes welling up with unshed tears. Earl, you liar. You lied to me. You said you'd go, and now you're going back on your word. Faced with her big, teary eyes and that pitiful expression, Earl sighed in defeat. Fine, I'll go with you. Belle's tears instantly vanished, replaced by a bright smile. That's more like it. A promise is a promise. Now, eat up, but don't eat too much. It'll be bad to run on a full stomach. Chapter 228. Belle sat quietly on the chair beside him, watching as Earl devoured the dinner she had brought. Seeing him enjoy the food filled her with a deep sense of satisfaction. After he finished eating, she leaned in slightly and asked, Was it good? If you like it, I can bring you food every time we go running together. Earl paused for a moment before replying, You don't have to go through all that trouble. I can just buy food myself. To his surprise, Belle blushed slightly. She lowered her gaze as she softly asked, Where would you even buy it? I made this myself, you know. Earl blinked. He was surprised as he asked, You cooked this? She nodded, her eyes filled with warmth. Do you like it? If you do, I can cook for you anytime. Earl hadn't expected that. Belle, the heiress of a wealthy family, had spent her entire summer break learning how to cook. And not just any dishes, but his favorite ones. What kind of feeling, what kind of motivation, could drive someone like her to willingly spend so much time in the kitchen just to make a meal for a guy? Earl remained silent for a moment, unsure of what to say. Belle, not giving him a chance to refuse, quickly changed the topic. She said, I'll clean this up for you. You should change into your workout clothes so that we can go for our run. From the bag, she pulled out a set of athletic wear. It was a matching set. Earl hesitated for a second before taking the clothes. Something about the thoughtful gesture made his heart feel unexpectedly warm. He walked into the bathroom to change. By the time he came out, Belle had already tidied up the table. Her breath hitched when she looked up and saw him in the athletic outfit. Earl, in fitted sportswear, looked even more striking than usual. The contours of his toned physique, the faint outline of his abs, it was enough to make her heart race. Her face flushed as she quickly looked away, trying to calm the little deer stampeding inside her chest. The two of them stepped out of the dorm and headed toward the wooded trail behind the campus. By now, the sky had darkened. Streetlights lined the quiet path, casting a soft, warm glow over the road, adding a touch of romance to the night. They jogged side by side, enjoying the cool evening air. But Belle's stamina was nowhere near Earl's. After just a short while, she was already out of breath. Earl noticed her struggling and slowed down to match her pace. After 2 laps, the night deepened. They strolled back toward the dorms, the moonlight bathing them in a silver glow. Belle stole a glance at Earl, feeling an unexplainable warmth in her heart. She remembered the day she had secretly taken his measurements for the workout clothes. Even then, she had been looking forward to this moment. Earl, sensing her gaze, turned to look at her. His eyes carried a soft, unreadable warmth. Their eyes met. For a fleeting second, time seemed to freeze. The silence between them was different now, charged, electric. Belle felt something in the air shift. A subtle, almost intoxicating atmosphere surrounded them. Her long lashes quivered. She hesitated, then closed her eyes, parting her lips ever so slightly, waiting. But nothing happened. After a few seconds, she peeked through her lashes and saw Earl's conflicted, hesitant expression. Her heart sank. Did Earl really not get the hint? Then, she suddenly remembered, she had been the one to steal his first kiss. The thought made her want to laugh. She scowled, pinching his arm hard before turning away with a huff, pretending to be annoyed. Without another word, she took off running ahead. Chapter 229. Earl had no idea what was going on, but seeing Belle suddenly take off, he instinctively chased after her. Suddenly, she let out a yelp and stumbled, collapsing onto the ground while clutching her ankle. Earl rushed to her side. "What happened? Are you okay?" Belle looked up at him, her expression pitiful as she rubbed her ankle. "I twisted my ankle. Can you help me massage it?" Earl helped her up and guided her to sit on a nearby rock. Then, he carefully lifted her foot and gently kneaded her ankle. It wasn't the first time he had done this for her, but every time he touched her delicate skin, he could feel his heartbeat quicken. His face grew warm, his ears burning slightly. As he worked, Belle suddenly lowered her head, her bright eyes shimmering with expectation. "Big Bun, do you think my feet are pretty?" she asked softly. The question caught him off guard. Without thinking, Earl blurted out, "Yeah, they are." The moment the words left his mouth, he realized how blunt they sounded. But when he saw the delighted expression on Belle's face, a strange warmth filled his chest. Without warning, she wrapped her arms around his neck, pulling him close. "Big Bun, I want to talk to you about something," she murmured. Her voice trembled slightly, her sincerity unmistakable. "Do you remember the things I told you before?" she continued, gazing into his eyes. "I want to be with you." Her eyes were full of love and longing. Earl's entire body tensed. For a moment, he saw nothing but her stunning eyes, her slightly parted lips, and the genuine emotion in her voice. But then, memories came crashing back. He remembered her playful, mischievous side, he remembered that conversation with Gigi, the words that had cut through him like a knife. A cold feeling settled in his chest, and his expression darkened. Taking a deep breath, he finally said, "Belle, you're an amazing person. I won't deny that I've been drawn to you before. But, this isn't going to work. Instead of wasting your time on me, you should go find someone who truly deserves you." Belle's eyes widened, searching his face for any hint of hesitation. She could feel him slipping away. Desperation crept into her voice as she pleaded, "Big Bun, after everything I've done for you, do you still not understand how I feel? If I didn't like you, would I have spent my entire summer learning to cook just to make you happy? If I didn't like you, would I be out here alone with you, dressed like this, in the middle of nowhere? If I didn't like you, would I have introduced you to my father?" Earl didn't know how to reply. Because everything she said was true. He couldn't deny it, her feelings were real. But the words he had overheard before had stuck with him like a thorn in his throat. He couldn't forget them. As if reading his mind, Belle bit her lip, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "You're still hung up on what I said to Gigi, aren't you?" she accused, frustration leaking into her voice. That was just an excuse to brush her off. What was I supposed to say? Should I have told her, not only did I not trick him, but I also completely fell for him myself? Earl knew she was telling the truth now. No girl would go to such lengths just for the sake of winning some petty argument. Even if it had started as a game, her feelings had long since turned real. But even so, Earl frowned, his mind drifting elsewhere. A vision of another girl appeared, elegant, graceful, and almost untouchable, like a star shining in the night sky. And in that moment, he made his choice. "Belle," he said firmly, "you can find someone better than me." Because deep down, he already knew. He was already drawn to someone. Ever since he played several songs with Bianca, Earl knew deep down that he was completely enchanted by her, as if her presence had captured his soul, and he couldn't escape it. He understood that pursuing Bianca might lead to an uncertain future, or maybe no future at all. But he still wanted to try, just so he wouldn't have any regrets. It was like when he confessed his feelings to Faye all those years ago. Chapter 230. Whether Belle's feelings for him were real or just another one of her games no longer mattered. Earl had already made his choice. And that choice was Bianca. No matter what, he and Belle were never meant to be. For a moment, Belle just stared at him, stunned. Then, her face turned pale. "Why would you say something like that?" Her voice trembled. "Why are you doing this to me?" Earl lowered his gaze, his voice calm but firm as he said, "Whether this is real or just another game, it doesn't change the fact that we can't be together." Belle's face grew even paler. Her body shook as she forced out the words. Why not?" Earl exhaled slowly. He said, "Because my heart already belongs to someone else." There was no hesitation in his voice. He knew that any uncertainty, any moment of weakness, would only be crueler to her in the end. He had to be clear. Belle bit down on her lip, her whole body trembling. "Who is she?" she whispered. "Bianca." Earl said her name without hesitation, his gaze filled with unspoken regret as he looked at Belle. "Belle, stop wasting your time on me. Whether this started as a game or something real, you should find love that belongs to you." Belle felt as if she had been struck by lightning. Her entire world seemed to shatter at that moment. She stared at Earl, desperately searching for any sign that he was joking. But he wasn't. His expression was calm, steady, completely serious. What he said was real. And that realization hurt. She had once thought she was just playing around with him. But at some point, she had fallen deeper than she ever intended, deeper than he had. She had convinced herself that her feelings for him were just admiration for his talent. But now, hearing him say those words, it felt like someone had punched a hole through her chest. She had always thought she was just playing around with Earl, but at some point, she realized she had fallen for him more seriously than even he had. She had convinced herself that her feelings for Earl were just a slight, fleeting attraction born from his talent, never imagining that they would hit her so hard when he said those words. Belle then bit her lip hard, her voice filled with fury as she shouted, "Earl, you're a complete jerk. Do you think I'm joking with you? I hate you. I'll hate you for the rest of my life." With that, she turned and ran off but suddenly stumbled and fell to the ground. Earl instinctively moved forward to help her, but she shoved his hand away. "Don't touch me," she cried, her voice raw with emotion. Her tear-filled eyes glared at him, filled with a mix of heartbreak and fury. "Don't think you're so special, Earl," she spat. "I won't chase after you anymore. Just wait and see. One day, you're going to regret this." With that, she turned and disappeared into the night. Earl stood there, staring after her until she was gone. His emotions were a tangled mess. A part of him wanted to run after her. Belle was breathtakingly beautiful, lively, charming, the kind of girl no man could truly resist. And yet, he didn't move. Because if he wavered now, it would only hurt her more. He had already made up his mind. To keep dragging Belle along when he had already given it to someone else would be nothing but selfish. It wouldn't be fair to her. And so, he let her go. It wasn't until Belle's figure had completely disappeared that Earl began walking aimlessly down the empty road at the back of the mountain, his heart weighed down with heaviness. He had feelings for Belle. Who could resist a girl so stunning and charming, like a little fairy? But he also knew who he truly loved. In the end, after struggling with the difficult choice, he had made his decision, and that decision was Bianca. Still, he couldn't shake the uncertainty. Was his choice the right one? Would he regret it someday, waking up from the dream of it all?